The way of the samurai is found in death. When it comes to either or, there is only the quick choice of death. It is not particularly difficult. Be determined and advance. To say that dying without reaching one's aim is to die a dog's death is the frivolous way of sophisticates. When pressed with the choice of life or death, it is not necessary to gain one's aim. We all want to live, and in large part we make our logic according to what we like. But not having attained our aim and continuing to live is cowardice. This is a thin and dangerous line. To die without gaining one's aim is a dog's death and fanaticism. But there is no shame in this. This is the substance of the way of the samurai. If by setting one's heart right every morning and evening, one is able to live as though his body were already dead, he gains freedom in the way. His whole life will be without blame, and he will succeed in his calling. A man is a good retainer to the extent that he earnestly places importance in his master. And this is the highest sort of retainer. If one is born into a prominent family that goes back for generations, it is sufficient to deeply consider the matter of obligation to one's ancestors, to lay down one's body and mind, and to earnestly esteem one's master. It is further good fortune if, more than this, one has wisdom and talent and can use them appropriately. But even a person who is good for nothing, and exceedingly clumsy, will be a reliable retainer, if only he has the determination to think earnestly of his master. Having only wisdom and talent is the lowest tier of usefulness. Once, when Lord Mitsushige was a little boy, and was supposed to recite from a copybook of the priest Kion, he called the other children and acolytes and said, "Please, come here and listen. It's difficult to read if there are hardly any people listening." The priest was impressed and said to the acolytes, "That's the spirit in which to do everything." There is nothing that we should be quite so grateful for as the last line of the poem that goes, "When your own heart asks." It can probably be thought of in the same way as the Nembutsu, and previously it was on the lips of many people. Recently, people who are called clever adorn themselves of superficial wisdom and only deceive others. For this reason, they are inferior to dull-witted folk. A dull-witted person is direct. If one looks deeply into his heart with the above phrase, there will be no hidden places. It is a good examiner. One should be of the mind that, meeting this examiner, he will not be embarrassed. The word gen means illusion or apparition. In India, a man who uses conjury is called a genjutsuishi. Everything in this world is but a marionette show. Thus we use the word gen. A certain swordsman in his declining years said the following: "In one's life, there are levels in the pursuit of study. In the lowest level, a person studies, but nothing comes of it, and he feels that both he and others are unskillful. At this point, he is worthless. In the middle level, he is still useless, but is aware of his own insufficiencies, and can also see the insufficiencies of others. In a higher level, he has pride concerning his own ability, rejoices in praise from others, and laments the lack of ability in his fellows. This man has worth. In the highest level, a man has the look of knowing nothing. These are the levels in general, but there is one transcending level, and this is the most excellent of all. This person is aware of the endlessness of entering deeply into a certain way, and never thinks of himself as having finished. He truly knows his own insufficiencies, and never in his whole life thinks that he has succeeded. He has no thoughts of pride, but with self-abasement knows the way to no end, or to the very end. It is said that Master Yagyu once remarked, "I do not know the way to defeat others, but the way to defeat myself." Throughout your life, advance daily, becoming more skillful than yesterday, more skillful than today. And this is never ending. At the time when there was a council concerning the promotion of a certain man, the council members were at the point of deciding that promotion was useless because of the fact that the man had previously been involved in a drunken brawl. But someone said, "If we were to cast aside every man who had made a mistake once, useful men could probably not be come by. A man who makes a mistake once will be considerably more prudent and useful because of his repentance. I feel that he should be promoted." Someone else then asked, "Will you guarantee him?" The man replied, "Of course I will." The others asked, "By what will you guarantee him?" And he replied, "I can guarantee him by the fact that he is a man who has erred once. A man who has never erred is dangerous." This said, the man was promoted. A certain person was brought to shame because he did not take revenge. The way of revenge lies in simply forcing one's way into a place and being cut down. And there is no shame in this. By thinking that you must complete the job, you will run out of time. By considering things like how many men the enemy has, time piles up. In the end, you will give up. No matter if the enemy has thousands of men, there is fulfillment in simply standing them off and being determined to cut them all down, starting from one end. You will finish the greater part of it. Concerning the night assault of Lord Asano's Ronin, the fact that they did not commit seppuku at the Sengakuji was an error, for there was a long delay between the time their lord was struck down and the time when they struck down the enemy. If Lord Kira had died of illness within that period, it would have been extremely regrettable. Because the men of the Kamigata area have a very clever sort of wisdom, and they do well at praiseworthy acts, but cannot do things indiscriminately, as was done in the Nagasaki fight. Although all things are not to be judged in this manner, I mention it in the investigation of the way of the samurai. When the time comes, there is no moment for reasoning. And if you have not done your inquiring beforehand, there is most often shame. Reading books and listening to people talk are for the purpose of prior resolution. Above all, the way of the samurai should be in being aware that you do not know what is going to happen next, and in querying every item day and night. Victory and defeat are matters of the temporary force of circumstances. The way of avoiding shame is different. It is simply in death. Even if it seems certain that you will lose, retaliate. Neither wisdom nor technique has a place in this. A real man does not think of victory or defeat. He plunges recklessly towards an irrational death. By doing this, you will awaken from your dreams. Once, there was a certain man who was very clever, but it was his character to always see the negative points of his jobs. In such a way, one will be useless. If one does not get it into his head from the very beginning that the world is full of unseemly situations, for the most part, his demeanor will be poor, and he will not be believed by others. And if one is not believed by others, no matter how good a person he may be, he will not have the essence of a good person. And this can also be considered as a blemish. It is not good to settle into a set of opinions. It is a mistake to put forth effort and obtain some understanding and then stop at that. At first, putting forth great effort to be sure that you can have grasped the basics, then practicing so that they may come to fruition, is something that will never stop for your whole lifetime. Do not rely on following the degree of understanding that you have discovered, but simply think, this is not enough. One should search throughout his whole life how best to follow the way, and he should study, setting his mind to work without putting things off. Within this is the way. Every morning, the samurai of 50 or 60 years ago would bathe, shave their foreheads, put lotion in their hair, cut their fingernails and toenails, rubbing them with pumice, and then with wood sorrel, and without fail pay attention to their personal appearance. It goes without saying that their armor in general was kept free from rust, and that it was dusted, shined, and arranged. Although it seems that taking special care of one's appearance is similar to showiness, it is nothing akin to elegance. Even if you are aware that you may be struck down today, and are firmly resolved to an inevitable death, if you are slain with an unseemly appearance, you will show your lack of previous resolve, will be despised by your enemy, and will appear unclean. For this reason it is said that both old and young should take care of their appearance. Although you say that this is troublesome and time-consuming, a samurai's work is in such things. It is neither busy work nor time-consuming, and constantly hardening one's resolution to die in battle, deliberately becoming as one already dead, and working at one's job and dealing with military affairs, there should be no shame. But when the time comes, a person will be shamed if he is not conscious of these things, even in his dreams, and rather passes his days in self-interest and self-indulgence. And if he thinks that this is not shameful, and feels that nothing else matters as long as he is comfortable, then he is dissipate and dissipate and discourteous actions will be repeatedly regrettable. The person without previous resolution to inevitable death makes certain that his death will be in bad form. But if one is resolved to death beforehand, in what way can he be despicable? One should be especially diligent in this concern. Furthermore, during the last 30 years, customs have changed. Now, when young samurai jeer together, if there's not just talk about money matters, loss and gain, secrets, clothing styles, or matters of sex, there is no reason to gather together at all. Customs are going to pieces. One can say that formerly, when a man reached the age of 20 or 30, he did not carry despicable things in his heart, and thus neither did such words appear If an elder unwittingly said something of that sort, he thought of it as a sort of injury. This new custom probably appears because people attach importance to being beautiful before society and to household finances. What things a person should be able to accomplish if he had no haughtiness concerning his place in society. It is a wretched thing that the young men of today are so contriving and so proud of their material possessions. Men with contriving hearts are lacking in duty. Lacking in duty, they will have no self-respect. According to Master Itai, even a poor penman will become substantial in the art of calligraphy if he studies by imitating a good model and puts forth effort. A retainer should be able to become substantial too if he takes a good retainer as his model. Today, however, there are no models of good retainers. In light of this, it would be good to make a model and to learn from that. To do this, one should look at many people and choose from each person his best point only. For example, one person for politeness, one for bravery, one for the proper way of speaking, one for correct conduct, and one for steadiness of mind. Thus will the model be made. An apprentice will not be up to his teacher's good points in the world of the arts either, but will receive and imitate only his bad ones. This is worthless. There are people who are good at manners, but have no uprightness. In imitating someone like this, one is likely to ignore the politeness and imitate only the lack of uprightness. If one perceives a person's good points, he will have a model teacher for anything. When delivering something like an important letter or other written materials, grasp it firmly in your hand as you go, and do not release it once, but hand it over directly to the recipient. Last year, at a great conference, there was a certain man who explained his dissenting opinion and said that he was resolved to kill the conference leader if it was not accepted. His motion was passed. After the procedures were over, the man said, "Their assent came quickly, and I think that they are too weak and unreliable to be counselors to the master." When an official place is extremely busy, and someone comes in thoughtlessly with some business or other, often there are people who treat him coldly and become angry. This is not good at all. At such times, the etiquette of a samurai is to calm himself and deal with the person in a good manner. To treat a person harshly is the way of middle-class lackeys. There is something to be learned from a rainstorm. When meeting with a sudden shower, you try not to get wet and run quickly along the road. But doing such things as passing under the eaves of houses, you still get wet. When you are resolved from the beginning, you will not be perplexed, though you still get the same soaking. This understanding extends to everything. Ordinarily, looking into the mirror and grooming oneself is sufficient for the upkeep of one's personal appearance. This is very important. Most people's personal appearance is poor because they do not look into the mirror well enough. Training to speak properly can be done by correcting one's speech when at home. Practice in letter writing goes to the extent of taking care in even one-line letters. It is good if all the above contain a quiet strength. Moreover, according to what the priest Ryzen heard when he was in the Kamigata area, when one is writing a letter, he should think that the recipient will make it into a hanging scroll. It is said, when you would see into a person's heart, become ill. When you are sick or in difficulties, many of those who are friendly or close to you in daily life will become cowards. When anyone is in unhappy circumstances, you should above all inquire after them by visiting or sending some gift. And you should never in your whole life be negligent towards someone from whom you have received a favor. By such things the consideration of others can be seen. In this world, the people who rely on others when they are in difficulties and afterwards not give them a thought are many. Because of some business, Morukua Haikoman was called upon to swear before the gods concerning the truth of a certain matter. But he said, "A samurai's word is harder than metal. Since I have impressed this fact upon myself, what more can the gods and Buddhas do?" And the swearing was cancelled. This happened when he was 26. Calculating people are contemptible. The reason for this is that calculation deals with loss and gain, and the loss and gain mind never stops. Death is considered loss, and life is considered gain. Thus, death is something that such a person does not care for, and he is contemptible. Furthermore, scholars and their like are men who with wit and speech hide their own true cowardice and greed. People often misjudge this. Lord Naoshige said, "The way of the samurai is in desperateness. 10 men or more cannot kill such a man. Common sense will not accomplish great things. Simply become insane and desperate. In the way of the samurai, if one uses discrimination, he will fall behind. One needs neither loyalty nor devotion, but simply to become desperate in the way. Loyalty and devotion are of themselves within desperation." The saying of Shida Kichinosuke, "When there is a choice of either living or dying, as long as there remains nothing behind to blemish one's reputation, it is better to live," is a paradox. He also said, "When there is a choice of either going or not going, it is better not to go." A corollary to this would be, "When there is a choice of either eating or not eating, it is better not to eat. When there is a choice of either dying or not dying, it is better to die." When meeting calamities or difficult situations, it is not enough to simply say that one is not at all flustered. When meeting difficult situations, one should dash forward bravely and with joy. It is the crossing of a single barrier, and is like the saying, "The more the water, the higher the boat." It is spiritless to think that you cannot attain to that which you have seen and heard the masters attain. The masters are men. You are also a man. If you think that you will be inferior in doing something, you will be on that road very soon. Master Itai said, Confucius was a sage because he had the will to become a scholar when he was 15 years old. He was not a sage because he studied later on. This is the same as the Buddhist maxim: first intention, then enlightenment. When one's own attitude on courage is fixed in his heart, and when his resolution is devoid of doubt, then when the time comes he will of necessity be able to choose the right move. This will be manifested by one's conduct and speech according to the occasion. One's word is especially important. It is not for exposing the depths of one's heart. This is something that people will know by one's everyday affairs. After I took up the attitude of a retainer, I never sat sloppily, whether at home or in some other place. Neither did I speak, but if there was something that could not be done properly without words, I made an effort to settle things by putting 10 words into one. Yamazaki Kurando was like this. It is said that even after one's head has been cut off, he can still perform some function. This fact can be seen from the example of Nita Yoshiada and Ono Doken. How shall one man be inferior to another? Mitani Jokyu said, even if a man be sick to death, he can bear up for 2 or 3 days. In the words of the ancients, one should make his decisions within the space of 7 breaths. Lord Takanobu said, if discrimination is long, it will spoil. Lord Naoshige said, when matters are done leisurely, 7 out of 10 will turn out badly. A warrior is a person who does things quickly. When your mind is going hither and thither, discrimination will never be brought to a conclusion. With an intense, fresh, and undelaying spirit, one will make his judgments within the space of 7 breaths. It is a matter of being determined and having the spirits to break right through to the other side. It is unthinkable to be disturbed at something like being ordered to become a Ronin. People at the time of Lord Katsushige used to say, if one has not been a Ronin at least 7 times, he will not be a true retainer. 7 times down, 8 times up. Men like Narutomi Hyogu have been Ronin 7 times. One should understand that it is something like being a self-writing doll. The master is also apt to give such orders at test. There is a saying that even though one burns up a Mount Mushi 7 times, it will return each time to its original form. And this is my great hope. I have always been obsessed with one idea, to be able to realize my heart's desire, which is that, though I am born 7 times, each time I will be reborn as a retainer of my clan. Yamamoto Jinimon once said that it is best for a samurai to have good retainers. Military affairs are not matters for one person alone, regardless of how useful he tries to be. Money is something that one can borrow from people, but a good man cannot suddenly be come by. One should sustain a man kindly and well from the first. And in having retainers, it will not do to nourish oneself alone. If you divide what you have and feed your lower ranks, you will be able to hold to good men. Being superior to others is nothing other than having people talk about your affairs and listening to their opinions. The general run of people settle for their own opinions and thus never excel. Having a discussion with a person is one step in excelling him. A certain person discussed with me the written materials at the clan office. He is better than someone like me in writing and researching, and seeking corrections from others. You excel them. For a samurai, a simple word is important no matter where he may be. By just one single word, martial valor can be made apparent. In peaceful times, words show one's bravery. In troubled times, too, One knows that by a single word his strength or cowardice can be seen. And this single word is the flower of one's heart. It is not something said simply with one's mouth. No matter what it is, there is nothing that cannot be done. If one manifests determination, he can move heaven and earth as he pleases. But because man is pluckless, he cannot set his mind to it. Moving heaven and earth without putting forth effort is simply a matter of concentration. Until the age of 40, it is best to gather strength. It is appropriate to have settled down by the age of 50. When discussing things with someone, it is best to speak appropriately about whatever the subject may be. No matter how good what you are saying might be, it will dampen the conversation if it is irrelevant. When someone else is giving you his opinion, you should receive it with deep gratitude, even though it is worthless. If you don't, he will not tell you the things he has seen and heard about you again. It is best to both give and receive opinions in a friendly sort of way. When one is involved in the affairs of a warrior, such as being a kaishaku, or making an arrest within one's own clan or group, people will notice when the time comes if he is resolved beforehand that no one can take his place. One should always take the attitude of standing above others in martial valor, always feel that he is inferior to no one, and always cultivate his courage. When on the battlefield, if you try not to let others take the lead, and have the sole intention of breaking into the enemy lines, then you will not fall behind others. Your mind will become fierce, and you will manifest martial valor. This fact has been passed down from the elders. Furthermore, if you are slain in battle, you should be resolved to have your corpse facing the enemy. If everyone were in accord and left things to Providence, then their hearts would be at ease. If they are not in accord, though they would do acts of righteousness, they lack loyalty. To be at odds with one's companions, to be prone to miss even infrequent meetings, to speak only cantankerous words, come from a shallow foolishness of mind. But thinking of the moment of truth, even though it be unpleasant, one should fix it in his mind to meet people cordially at all times, and without distraction, and in a way in which one will not seem bored. Moreover, in this world of uncertainties, one is not even sure of the present. It would be worthless to die while being thought ill of by people. Lies and insincerity are unbecoming. And this is because they are for self-profit. And though it is not profitable to have others lead the way, or not to be quarrelsome, or not to be lacking in manners, or to be humble, if one will do things for the benefit of others, and will meet even those whom he has met often before in a first-time manner, he will have no bad relationships. Manners between husband and wife are not different from this. If one is as discreet in the end as he is in the beginning, then there should be no discord. There is a certain priest who is said to be able to get everything accomplished by means of his cleverness. There is not a monk in Japan today who can oppose him. And this is not the least bit strange. There is simply no one who sees through to the foundation of things. If one is but secure at the foundation, he will not be pained by departure from minor details or affairs that are contrary to expectation. But in the end, the details of a matter are important. The right and wrong of one's way of doing things are found in trivial matters.
Concerning martial valor, merit lies more in dying for one's master than in striking down the enemy. This can be understood from the devotion of Sate Suganubo. When I was young, I kept a diary of regret and tried to record my mistakes day by day, but there was never a day when I didn't have 20 or 30 entries. As there was no end to it, I gave up. And even today, when I think about the day's affairs after going to bed, there is never a day when I do not make some blunder in speaking or in some activity. Living without mistakes is truly impossible. But this is something that people who live by cleverness have no inclination to think about. When reading something aloud, it is best to read from the belly. Reading from one's mouth, one's voice will not endure. This is Nakano Shikibu's teaching. During happy times, pride and extravagance are dangerous. If one is not prudent in ordinary times, he will not be able to catch up. A person who advances during good times will falter during the bad. The master took a book from its box. When he opened it, there was the smell of drying clove buds. What is called generosity is really compassion. In the Shin-I it is written, "Seen from the eye of compassion, there is no one to be disliked. One who has sinned is to be pitied all the more." There is no limit to the breadth and depth of one's heart. There is room enough for all. That we still worship the sages of the 3 ancient kingdoms is because their compassion reaches us yet today. Whatever you do should be done for the sake of your master and parents, the people in general, and for posterity. And this is great compassion. And the wisdom and courage that come from compassion are real wisdom and courage. When one punishes or strives with the heart of compassion, what he does will be limitless in strength and correctness. Doing something for one's sake, for one's own sake, is shallow and mean and turns into evil. I understand the matters of wisdom and courage. I understood the matters of wisdom and courage some time ago. I am just now beginning to understand the matters of compassion. Master Itai said, "If one were to say what it is to do good, in a single word it would be to endure suffering. Not enduring is bad without exception." Recently, a certain person on his way to Edo sent home a detailed letter from the first night's inn. Though he was a person who neglected such things when he was busy, he excelled other people in being as attentive as this. In the judgment of the elders, a samurai's obstinacy should be excessive. A thing done with moderation may later be judged to be insufficient. I have heard that when one thinks he has gone too far, he will not have erred. This sort of rule should not be forgotten. The resolution of the men of former times was deep. Those between the ages of 13 and 60 went to the front lines. For this reason, men of advanced years hid their age. For serious affairs that bear directly on oneself, if one does not take care of things by making his own judgment his foundation and breaking through headlong, matters will not be brought to a close. In conferring with people about matters of importance, there may be many cases when your affair is thought lightly of, or when people will not speak of the real circumstances. At such times one must use his own judgment. At any rate, it is sufficient to become a fanatic, and choose to throw one's life away. At such a time, if one thinks about doing things well, confusion will soon arise and they will blunder. In many cases, one's downfall may be brought about by an ally who is trying to do something for one's benefit, or one may be killed by his friend's kindness. It is the same as when one requests permission to become a monk. Lord Naoshigi said, "An ancestor's good or evil can be determined by the conduct of his descendants. A descendant should act in the way that will manifest the good in an ancestor and not the bad. This is filial piety." When the Kano shogun committed seppuku, the members of his group gathered at Oki Hayabo's place and said various bad things about him. Hayabo said, "One does not speak bad things about a person after his death, and especially since a person who has received some censure is to be pitied. It is the obligation of a samurai to speak something good of him, no matter how little. There is no doubt that in 20 years, Shogun will have the reputation of a faithful retainer." These were truly the words of a seasoned man. In carefully scrutinizing the affairs of the past, we find there are many different opinions about them, and that there are some things that are quite unclear. It is better to regard such things as unknowable. Lord Senonori once said, "As for the things that we don't understand, there are ways of understanding them. Furthermore, there are some things we understand just naturally, and again some things we can't understand, no matter how hard we try." This is interesting. This is very profound. It is natural that one cannot understand deep and hidden things. Those things that are easily understood are rather shallow.